Hello and welcome to the Tough Girl podcast, which is all about motivating and inspiring you. I'm your host, Sarah Williams. If you want to find out more about me and my background, then please do go and check out toughgirlchallenges.com. A massive thank you to all of the patrons who are supporting the Tough Girl podcast. Without their support, this podcast would not be coming out. Today, we are speaking to Natalia Cohen from eyeofthenomad.com. Natalia has been traveling the world, living, working and exploring for the last 15 years. She has gained access and insights into an incredible variety of cultures and customs on all continents. Her unshakable passion for adventure has taken her to people and places that most of us can only imagine. From the Middle East to Antarctica, the villages of Africa, to the colours and chaos of India, South America and the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Her most recent adventure led her to row across the Pacific Ocean, delving deep into the mind and exploring the strength of human spirit. That is what we're going to be discussing today, her incredible Pacific Ocean row and what she learned on that journey. Natalia, it's great to get you on the podcast. Could you tell everybody a little bit more about you?
Sure. So my name is Natalia Cohen. I am 41 years old and I grew up, I was born in South Africa and then I moved to Manchester when I was 5 years old. So I grew up here and I left Manchester about 16 years ago and have spent about 15 years wandering this beautiful world that we have. I've been living and working in different countries, predominantly in the travel industry. And I returned to the UK about 15 years ago because I became involved in an expedition and I needed to train in the UK and ended up rowing across the Pacific Ocean. And that's how come I've ended up back in the UK.
That's absolutely amazing. I love it. So that was a world first for women, wasn't it? The Pacific row.
It was, yes, definitely one of the most extraordinary things I've ever done in many ways.
But how did it even come about? What was the backstory to taking on the Pacific Ocean?
It's a long story, I suppose. I think generally speaking, the main thing that I've tried to do in life is be really open to opportunities when they've come my way. And because of that, I have had some weird and wonderful experiences. And I just finished managing a safari lodge in Tanzania. And I was back in Cape Town and I saw an advert on a website where it was basically there was a woman in particular, Laura Penhall, and she was looking for a team of women to row with her across the Pacific. And originally I actually thought, what a ridiculous thing to do. Like, why would anybody want to do that? And the more I thought about it and the more I came across friends in Cape Town and they were asking me what I was going to do next, I started telling them that I was going to row across the Pacific. Almost as a joke, to be honest, to begin with. And the more I said it, the more I believed it. And the more I thought, what actually is stopping me from applying for this ridiculous expedition? And I've always had a love of the ocean. And I believed that it was a mental challenge over a physical challenge because I'd never rowed before. So I thought, well, let me see if I like rowing. So I popped to the gym. I sat on an erg on a rowing machine for about an hour and a half. And I loved it. I loved the motion and I found it very meditative. And I thought, okay, I'm going to apply. And I suppose I never expected in a million years to be selected. And lo and behold, I was. It was quite a rigorous selection process. So Laura had been involved in the project for about 4 years. And she'd been involved with different team members and things had happened and the team had disbanded. And she ended up putting together this recruitment process with the help of a sports psychologist, Keith Goddard, and a strength and conditioning coach as well. And what happened was we got involved, the rest of the team, through this recruitment process. So that's why I moved back to the UK. I was involved in a series of interviews, team and individual interviews, strength and conditioning tests, quite a thorough examination with the sports psychologist. And then 10 of us were selected. We were sent to the Brecon Beacons. We were given basically a 24-hour beasting out there. We were sleep deprived. We worked with a company that actually trains quite a lot of the army guys. And we were observed to see how we dealt with the sleep deprivation, how we worked together. We were each given leadership opportunities and tasks that we had to perform. And from that selection process, the team was chosen. I think a few people actually deselected themselves because this was a challenge with a lot of commitment involved. And that's basically how it all began.
Even just doing like the selection process, it just sounds as though you would have learned like a huge amount about yourself. Like, I mean, from a lot of the conversations with women that I have, especially, it's around that mental side of things. So with the sports psychologist, what sort of things were you discussing? Was it hypothetical situations? Were you having to give examples? How were they almost like evaluating you? What were they looking for, anything in particular?
I think initially it was a general conversation just to see where we were at mentally, and where we envisaged ourselves and the reasons why we were interested in taking part in the expedition. And then during the training process, which was mental, physical and practical, and the mental side of it was probably the most important side of it, we did quite a lot of personality profiling, because I think the interesting thing about putting a team together specifically, and I think this was something that Laura found as well, was that, you know, generally speaking, you always tend to look for people that are similar to yourself, you know, and when we recruit, that's what we do. We generally try and recruit in our own style. And really what made us work so well as a team was the fact that we were completely different people and personalities, and we dealt with situations in very different ways as well. And I think that was a lot of the training with the sports psychologist. So how we did deal with situations and what strengths we each brought to the team, and how we could draw on each other's strengths, I suppose, and then support each other through the weaknesses that we had. And we did a lot of what if scenarios with the sports psychologist. So we needed to run through every eventuality that would happen getting to the start line, and also while we were crossing the ocean. So that was a fascinating process. And I think what you said, Sarah, is completely correct. You know, at the end of the day, with any challenge and life in general, really, it's all about what's going on in the mind, and, you know, building up our own individual mental resilience, I suppose. And, you know, you can only, we have to look after ourselves, essentially. It all starts with you. And once you've built up that individual mental resilience, then you can be in a stronger and better position to, I suppose, have that ripple effect and be able to support others around you. So a lot of our training was just working on our mind and our thought patterns, and a lot of cognitive behavioral therapy, and how to shift your mental state as well, and how to deal with things that are going on around you and how you deal with them. So it was a truly fascinating process, just getting to the start line, never even mind crossing the ocean.
I mean, I can just say, this is just so valuable for life in general, like just to you understanding more about your mind, how it works, your thought patterns, how you can shift your mental state and change your mental state, and hugely powerful things to be learning. So let's just talk a little bit more about the training that you did, and what was the time period of training, and were you working at the same time while you were training, or how did you balance everything that you needed to do?
Yeah, so we got involved at different times. So Emma had been involved for about a year and a half about a year before me and Izzy got involved in the expedition. So for me, the training period was about 9 months, and it was almost as though we had to set up our own company, really. That I think getting to the start line was almost as challenging as the row. So we wanted to align ourselves with experts in every field, because the last thing we wanted was to just be a group of girls on a pink boat in the middle of the ocean and need rescuing, basically. So we did mental, physical, practical training. We did a lot of sea survival skills. We did capsize drills. We did a 48-hour practice row, a lot of strength and conditioning. We needed to be strong and to actually put on weight, interestingly, for the row, because we need to have those extra reserves for if we were calorie deficient while we were out there. So it was a lot of weight training. And we did all of this whilst holding down full-time jobs. So we did all the PR, media, marketing, sponsorship, logistics, the legal side of things, the admin, everything. And yes, that it was challenging and quite overwhelming, really. So we each needed to take lead or leadership over different areas, and that's what we did. And by doing it that way, we could hold each other accountable for those different areas that we were leading on, and we slowly managed to I suppose cross off the necessary goals on the list each month of what needed to be done and how we actually needed to get to the start line. So that was an invaluable lesson as well, and I think prepared us for the crossing, because being overwhelmed is also a feeling that I think a lot of people come up against, you know, whether it's being overworked or if you've got children and you're trying to balance, you know, that family life with having your own life as well and getting everything done. It's how do you deal with those feelings of being overwhelmed, and how do you break everything down, whether it's, you know, every day or every month, just to make sure that you are getting everything done and you're not being completely drowned by the challenges that you're being faced. And that's actually one of the best preparations that we had, not only for life, but for crossing the ocean as well. And I think that's what we had to do. We literally would break everything down into these more manageable size chunks, and just take everything day by day and week by week and month by month, which when we got out onto the ocean was perfect, because on the ocean it was almost stroke by stroke.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think it's, you know, I honestly think it's absolutely fascinating, because it is a big challenge, and the logistics of something like this and the number of things that you need to think about, consider and prepare for. And, you know, you talked about the training as well, the mental, the physical, the practical, these you know, doing all, I was going to say kayaking, but I mean like capsizing and, you know, doing all that awesome stuff. I mean, during that 9-month training period, you're holding down a full-time job, you've got your own specific role with terms of admin. Was there a point during training where you really, really got pushed or challenged and you started to have some doubts, or just started to think, oh my God, what have I let myself in for here? Actually, is this the right decision for me?
Good question. I think I tried not to let my mind go there. And what I did to help me get through the training period, I literally took it day by day, because there was so much that was involved in getting to the start line that I just concentrated all my energies on getting to the start line. So that, I suppose, essentially was my first goalpost. And then once we actually got to the start line, that's when I thought more about, okay, so now the second part of this expedition is the actual row itself. And when I got overwhelmed, I suppose, which is the best way that I can describe it, it was just, I suppose, when I felt overwhelmed, that's when I slipped out of the moment, and all of those feelings of insecurity and doubt and, you know, the self-limiting beliefs that we have, they all came rushing in. And I think the beautiful thing about being part of an expedition as a team is that we were always there for each other, and we supported each other through everything. And because we got to know each other so well, we knew what our strengths were, and we also knew what the weaknesses were. So we knew how to bring out the best in each other, and also what brought out the worst in each other. So if we had a training session, which was, you know, in the middle of February, and it was the middle of winter, and it was ice cold, and we had to get out there and we had to row, and it was the last thing we wanted to do. You know, we knew who was bad in cold weather, which was namely me. I hate being cold and wet. That is one of my hot buttons, basically. So, you know, the girls would just support me through it. And I think, you know, when you're doing something as a team, it's always a lot easier anyway. And, you know, you're being held accountable to someone else, which always helps. And I think one of the lessons that I learned getting to the start line and crossing the ocean was that humor and laughter can actually soften most of life's blows that you get. And I don't think I've ever laughed as much as I did during this expedition. And I think that's an amazing way that we dealt with a lot of the hardships and the challenges, and, you know, especially out there on the ocean, that you know, the pain and the discomfort and the monotony, we laughed our way through a lot of it. And I think through the training, we had to do that as well. You know, it was it was ridiculous sometimes. You know, we had a huge amount of money that needed to be raised, and we just needed to remain positive and optimistic, and know that little by little we would get there in the end. And it was a huge test of perseverance. And I think that is a trait that we all share in abundance. We never gave up, and we just kept on going and going and going. And another amazing lesson that I learned getting to the start line was that if you don't ask, you don't get. And, you know, the worst that can happen is people say no, but it was an invaluable lesson. And, you know, by just putting yourself out there and going out of your comfort zone and asking for things that you ordinarily would be too afraid to ask for, we managed to get Kylie Minogue as one of our patrons, and Sir Ranulph Fiennes as an ambassador. And it's actually amazing how much support is out there when you actually ask for it. And that was a beautiful lesson to learn getting to the start line.
That's a lovely, lovely lesson. And Joe, I think sometimes I sometimes struggle to ask for help. And I sometimes feel as though it's almost admitting weakness that, oh, well, Sarah can't do that. She's asking for help. Whereas actually I think it's almost a sign of strength to be able to think, okay, well, this is what I need to do. And actually, I do need to reach out for support. I do need to get Kylie Minogue on board. I do need to ask for that sponsorship. I do need to get to that money. I do need to speak to those specialists. And I do need to ask those questions and learn from people who've done it before and have got that expertise. I am totally with you on the cold and the wetness. Like, that is for me. That is those are like my two triggers as well. Like, being cold is just horrendous. And I think one of my worst experiences would have been I was caving in New Zealand. Most probably, when was I in New Zealand? It was very, very cold, and I was wet, and I was like trying to squeeze myself through these tiny little places, 40, 50 meters underground, just thinking, what am I doing? What am I doing? But, oh my goodness. So let's just put some context around the challenge. So the Coxless Crew are a team of 6 women. In January 2016, set 2 world records, becoming the first all-female team and the first ever Fo4r's boat to row unsupported across the Pacific Ocean, a journey of nearly 9,000 miles from San Francisco, USA to Cairns, Australia, in a 29-foot ocean rowing the boat. The expedition was planned to take 6 months, but due to unforeseen circumstances, took a staggering 9 months. I mean, this is epic. I mean, you've already talked about the preparation and setting your first goalpost, getting to the start line. Can you take us back to that point? Like, when reality struck in and it was suddenly like, oh my God, we've got a week to go, 4 days to go. Holy moly, 3 days to go. Wow, we're going, the night before. I mean, can you remember what that was like?
It was crazy, actually. We headed out to San Francisco, and there was so much that had to be done that I think we were all very distracted in those days running up to departure, which was great. And then everybody's parents, except for mine, came out to San Francisco to see us off. And it was something that I'd arranged with my family. I didn't mind that they weren't going to be there, because I felt like it would be almost too emotional to have them there. And I didn't want to put them through that emotion, really. And I knew that they were going to come to Hawaii to see us arrive at the first port of call. And then they would have come to Cairns, and they did come to Cairns at the end of the journey if we'd been successful, which luckily we were. And all I remember is we had to leave at about 2-3 in the morning because of the currents pushing out under the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco. So it was pitch black, and there wasn't really anybody there except for Tony, who has our onshore support, and the parents of Izzy, Laura, and Emma. And all I remember, it's really clear to me, and it's so strange, but I just had this very bizarre sense of calm. I just felt really, really calm. And I just remember Sarah, who's our documentary producer, director, she was there as well, and she was filming, and she just put the camera on me and she said, what's going on? How are you feeling? And I just went, I just feel really calm. I just hope it's not the calm before the storm. And that's all I remember thinking. And then just going into the cabin, and then we pushed off. And I think Izzy said it just feels like we're going on a training row. Like it doesn't feel real. And then off we went. It was pitch black, just the four of us on our little pink boat. She was called Doris, by the way. So us and Doris off on the boat. And that was really it. And for the first 24 hours, everything was beautiful. And it was really calm. And we just started rowing. Actually, within those first 24 hours, I was partnered with Laura to begin with. So we rowed in 2-hour shifts, 2 hours on and 2 hours off, 24 hours a day. And in those first 24 hours, at one point during the night, Laura turned to me and she said, can you see that pirate ship? There's this huge pirate ship. It's coming up on our bow. Can you see the pirate ship? And that was basically the beginning. Like this is within the first 24 hours of Laura's hallucinations that started for the next 9 months. So that really was the beginning. And the first 24 hours was beautiful. And then after that, everything actually started going horribly wrong and we hit really bad weather. And that's all another story. But that very first initial push off, I was just filled with this quiet and this silence and this calm.
I suppose as well, it's that you've worked so hard to get to that point. And I think anybody who's done any challenge, whether that is doing a marathon, going off traveling for a year, doing MDS. I mean, for me as well, it was getting to the start line. It was like, actually, this is what I've trained for. This is what I'm ready for. I'm ready to start now, because there must have been a huge amount of pressure building up during that training time period.
Definitely.
I'm quite interested. So 2 hours on, 2 hours off. Was that non-stop then for the next few months, etc.? Was that like your sleeping pattern, your life? Was that how it went?
That's exactly how it went. So our life became these 2-hour chunks of time. And with the sleeping, so how we all sleep normally is we sleep a monophasic sleeping pattern, which is between 6 and 8 hours. And what we did was we moved into polyphasic, so short, regular periods of sleep. And they were normally no longer than about 90 minutes. By the time you got in and got changed and done bits and bobs that you needed to do, you normally got a good 90-minute block of sleep. And that was also a system that had been tried and tested with a lot of other ocean rowing boats. And it's more that the rowing for longer than 2 hours is quite taxing physically. And as long as you're getting at least one full sleep cycle in, which is normally between 45 minutes and 90 minutes, then that actually gives the body enough time to recover and rest during that time. So, and it was actually incredible how quickly, I mean, it is amazing, isn't it? I'm sure you've experienced this as well through all your challenges, how unbelievably adaptable we are as human beings. And, I'd say within the first 24 hours, we just got used to that routine and the body starts to adapt. And, not to say it was easy, because it really was very challenging. And I think the nighttime rowing shifts were probably the most challenging for most of the team. And it was actually a fascinating experience living life in 2-hour chunks. And, time started having this very bizarre meaning to us out there. There was daytime and there was nighttime. And within those 12-hour periods, there was these 2-hour chunks. And we just got into this routine. And life became very simple, essentially. That all we had to do is eat and sleep and row, and then repeat that over and over again. And there's something to be said for a simple way of life out there, as challenging as it was. We knew exactly what needed to be done every 2 hours, and we could concentrate all of our energies on that, and nothing else mattered. And there was, no pressure, no societal pressures, no worrying about what else had to be done or looking after anybody else or other responsibilities. We all knew what our responsibilities were. Each of us had different areas that we led on while we were on the boat as well. And we just concentrated on those. And that became life. And I suppose after 9 months, which is a long time, that was really all we knew. And it became quite normal, bizarrely, for us out there.
What sort of things are you thinking about in your 2-hour block when you're rowing? What's going through your head?
I think we all dealt with the 2-hour shifts very differently. And to begin with, we were just getting used to the routines. But after months of being out at sea, especially myself, Laura, and Emma. So just to explain quickly what happened, me, Laura, and Emma rode the full 9-month journey. And then Izzy, Lizanne, and Meg, they swapped over. So they swapped over the fourth seat of the boat and worked as a relay team, essentially. So that, in hindsight, was an amazing way to do it, because each leg of the journey essentially felt like a different adventure. And with each new team member that came on for that leg of the journey, it provided this great change in team dynamic. And it was an opportunity for me, Laura, and Emma to retell all of our stories. And so it worked really well. But in those 2 hours, I mean, initially we would talk all the time. I mean, I don't think I've ever got to know people as well as I got to know that incredible team of girls out there. And we would just tell each other our life stories. We had hours, and that's another beautiful thing out there is, we had the time and the space to truly listen to one another and to share those stories and to be heard, which I don't think happens as much nowadays as it used to. People are so busy and people want things so quickly and instantaneously with social media. And out there we had time and space. So we would tell each other life stories. We would play word games. We would tell stories. We would make up stories. We had iPods, so we had a couple of luxury items out there. So we had music that we'd listen to. We had audio books. And what we would do before each shift, we would decide in our rowing pairs what type of shift it was going to be. So whether we wanted to maybe be quiet and actually just do some reflecting, whether we wanted to just listen to music, whether we wanted to chat and carry on with our life stories. And so by doing that, we managed each other's expectations, because otherwise maybe if you were rowing in a pair, maybe you wanted to have a quiet rowing shift and they wanted to chat. So we needed to make sure that we were always on the same wavelength with each shift. But for me, if I'm really honest with you, I didn't think about very, very much. It was almost as if those thoughts just stopped while I was out there. And it was essentially like this incredible 9-month meditation, because I would just focus fully on my surroundings. And as you know, when you're surrounded by nature, it's so much easier to be in the moment and to just observe what's going on and to not think about anything. And it was the most beautiful experience being in that 360-degree horizon with nothing around you. And I would just watch the lights glittering on the surface of the water, because when you looked closely, there was so many different shades of blue and other colors, with the sunsets and the sunrises and these unbelievably dramatic skies and the ever-changing cloud formations. And it was very easy to lose yourself, I suppose, in that incredibly powerful, immense ocean. So I didn't think about very much, which a lot of the other girls found amazing, because they would have a lot going on in their minds. And that was just testament to how different we were as well. Like Laura, for example, she's amazing. She's such a projector. So she would almost visualize these very detailed examples of meetings that were going to happen when she got back to land, or how Christmas was going to be and who was going to be there and what they were going to eat. And she would always have conversations with friends. Occasionally I'd be rowing behind her and I'd see her lips going, and I'd have to say, who are you chatting to now? And she'd literally be having these conversations in her head with friends. And it was so interesting how differently we dealt with our thoughts out there. It was amazing, really, really fascinating. But I think, as I mentioned earlier on, that the really important thing was, how did you shift your mindset? Because, if you did find yourself spiraling into negativity, or the monotony of what we were doing got a little bit too much, we had to have these techniques in place so that we could shift our mindset and, I suppose, break state of mind, and bring yourself back to the moment. So we had lots of different ways that we did that. Music was an amazing one. So playing a song, can always shift your mindset, whether you need to be re-energized or you've had a very adrenaline filled rowing shift and you actually need to calm yourself down, and maximize on that sleep. Mantras worked really well for me. If I found that I was just being completely overwhelmed with the monotony of that backward and forward motion, I'd have to just sort of repeat a mantra that would break my mindset, just break that state of mind and bring myself back to where I was. We could motivate one another, which was amazing as well. Having, with it being a team event, we were never down at the same time. So we would always pick each other up when we needed to. Photos. So we had the odd photo that we brought with us that would, just bring memories flooding back to us. And again, just change that state and make us move from negative to positive. We blogged, which was an amazing distraction out there. So we blogged for every day, every 257 days that we were out there, we wrote a blog. And that was a wonderful way to keep your mind occupied, because we would spend hours on the oars discussing what we were going to blog about and things like that. And family, we spoke to family as well, which was really good for motivation as well.
When you talked about the mantras, is there a mantra now that you still have from your row across the Pacific that you still use, or that still will pop into your head occasionally?
I got given this beautiful necklace from my ex-work, and the phrase on there resonated very, very strongly with me. And I use that very much again across the ocean. And I use it since I've been back on land as well. And it said, I am in charge of how I feel. And today I'm choosing happiness. And I think for me, that was the essence of the row out there, was that, it actually is a choice. We can choose how we feel about a situation, as difficult, I know it sounds a lot easier than it is. And it is very difficult to do when you are going through particularly challenging times. But, not only every day, but every 2 hours, we could almost reset the clock and choose how we were going to deal with those 2 hours. So I would wake up and I'd be like, okay, I'm going to have an amazing 2 hours, and I would just set that intention and choose that attitude, and then go out there and, regardless of the pain I was feeling in my hands or my backside with the salt sores and the pressure wounds, I would look for the positive. And I think that was the thing. It was just being able to look for that positive and look for the beauty and try and find the highlights. And that's something I very much have brought with me. And I do, if I have a particularly overwhelming day back here, I'll say, okay, it's not been a great day, but, what's been the highlights? What have been your highlights today? And just make sure that you're always looking for that positive. Or wake up in the morning and say, today, I'm going to be happy. Today is going to be a great day, and just set that intention. And that seemed to work really well for me. It doesn't work all the time, because sometimes you're miserable and you just want to be miserable. And, out there, if you were having a really bad day and you just wanted to scream or shout, then amazingly, when you're in the middle of the ocean, you can actually do that. It probably doesn't work so well if you're on the middle of the underground in London, if you just fancy a good old scream out to the universe. But on the ocean, if we were feeling frustrated, there was always a way to release it, which was great.
With the ability to choose and, having that choice and sort of deciding, today's going to be a good day, I'm going to have a good row. And I suppose what would be interesting is it can't have been good all the time. And what I mean by that is there must have been challenges that you must have faced over this 9-month period, which really did put pressure on you either mentally or physically. And I'd just be interested to know, what were those challenges, or what was the most challenging aspect for you what was the most challenging aspect for you?
I mean, 9 months is a long time, and we all had our own demons that we had to battle out there, for sure. I think for me, it was whenever I'm quite good at staying in the moment. And I think when you're in the moment, you almost have this invisible shield that protects you, because you're exactly where you're supposed to be when you're in that moment. And when you slip out of the moment, that's when all the fear and doubt and insecurity and everything rushes into the mind. You're thinking about the past, or you're concerning yourself with the future. And that's when you have issues. So for me, it was whenever I slipped out of the moment. So I had one particularly difficult nighttime shift where I suffered quite a lot with skin irritation. So I had a lot of salt sores on my body, my backside particularly, and my underarms at one point got really badly affected with salt sores and chafing and things like that. And my lips was they basically were blistered and bleeding, and took about 2 months before they would heal. And there was just a lot of pain, I suppose. And normally I would row for about 10 minutes and all of that pain would just subside. It would be desensitized and I'd be able to get on with a 2-hour rowing shift. But this particular shift, that pain just didn't go away. And I suppose I didn't want to row anymore. That's really what happened. And I just thought, I can't do this. I can't do this anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. I can't do this anymore. I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't do it. And it was so bizarre. I don't know if it was maybe a mantra that I'd practiced, on land beforehand. And I was so convinced in the success of the expedition for all of us. But I just heard this almost inner deep voice come from within me, and it just shouted, "You can do it." It was so bizarre. And then I was like, I can do it. I can do it. I can do it. And I just shifted that mantra into I can do it. I can do it. I can do it. And I knew that I only had about 40 minutes left of the rowing shift. And I think that also helped, knowing that everything was a finite period in terms of shifts. And I just had to get through that 40 minutes, and then I could rest, and then I could reset, and I could choose my attitude again, I suppose. And so that happened on occasion when I slipped out of the moment and I would just not want to row anymore. There's only so much rowing you can do, really. And I just had to distract myself. But I think for some of the other girls, when they spiraled down into that negativity, we can help support one another like you can in life, but ultimately you have to get yourself back into that light. And I think it was about facing those demons and working out how to bring yourself back, really.
With the group of women, with the girls that you were rowing with, I mean, one of the things you said at the start was that instead of it being a group of very similar, obviously you're all very similar minded, you had this very common goal, but instead of everybody being the same way, you went for, the group was made up of diverse personality types, different backgrounds, but you had the shared values, to go after this race. So there must have been times where those differences really struck, or you had problems or issues. I mean, I can just imagine, sometimes when you spend a lot of time with, say, one particular individual, there might be just this little niggle, whether it's something, in the grand scheme of things wouldn't make a big difference. But when you're 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for 9 months, a huge amount of time, how did you deal with those issues?
Yeah. So what you said is correct. We were very different. We were aligned with our determination to be successful, and we did share the same values. So with those values, we put them together in an acronym, and that acronym was SPIRIT. And the SPIRIT represented strength, perseverance, integrity, resilience, inspiration, and trust. And what we did was every week we would have a review session, and we would basically hold each other accountable to those values that we knew that we all shared. And we would write down how we were feeling mentally, physically, emotionally. We had this system, and then we would discuss it. So every week we would discuss where we were mentally and physically, and how we were feeling. And if we had any issues at all, we would confront one another. And that was something that we learned to do getting to the start line. So after every event that we held, whether it was a fundraising event or it was a practical skills event, we would basically give each other feedback, and we would give each other constructive criticism. We would say what we thought each of us did really well and where we thought each of us could improve. And we got used to dealing with each other in that way and being quite open and honest and candid with one another. And I suppose also not taking things too personally. So that was great preparation for on the boat, because exactly as you say, you know, you're in this incredibly confined space. You can't go anywhere. You can't go for a walk if you get pissed off. You know, there's nowhere to run. There's nowhere to hide. You can't. The most dangerous thing would be to let this negativity build up inside you. And we called it pebbles in shoes. So if you had this tiny pebble in your shoe, you had to mention it. You had to get that pebble out straight away, because if you keep walking on that same pebble, it's going to cause you a lot of pain eventually. And so we did confront one another. And if we had issues, we would be very open about them. And amazingly, we didn't have that many issues out there on the boat. Necessity was probably one thing. You know, we knew that we had to rely on each other to get where we needed to go to. But the biggest, I'll put it into perspective for you, Sarah. The biggest argument that happened on the boat was over a packet of instant noodles.
That's serious stuff though on an ocean. Instant noodles.
I know. It was all about the noodles. And it actually, the argument was between me and Laura, and it ended up being this incredible, it's almost like a highlight of the journey. We knew that when we came back, people were going to be asking us about the noodles. And after the argument, we decided that we were going to blog about it, and we were each going to give our side of the situation. And we did this little photo shoot, and it ended up being very, very amusing. And since I've come back, I've been speaking about the expedition, and a lot of people ask, you know, come on, you know, you must have had arguments. What did you argue about? So the noodle incident has come up a few times, and it's hysterical, because to this day, me and Laura still believe that each of us are right about the noodles. And but apart from that, I think having that system in place where every week we did discuss how we were feeling, it was a really good opportunity to air problems. And the one thing that I'd say we all shared, which was an amazing quality, is that we're very good at letting things go. So we won't harbor any ill feelings. We won't let issues get bigger and bigger and bigger. We didn't hold a grudge. You know, we would confront, we would say what we wanted to say, and then we would just let it go. And that helped enormously out there, I think, just being able to let it go.
You must have learnt a huge amount from this trip. And when did you finish the trip? When did you complete it?
It's almost a year ago now. It's crazy. The 26th of January. So it's literally almost a year.
So bearing in mind, you know, the time that's gone by, and you've had that year to process, to reflect, to think back, and maybe almost to put those rose tinted glasses on. You know, what are the things that you've learned most about yourself from having this experience and going through the training and spending those 9 months on the Pacific Ocean?
Interestingly, I don't feel like I've reflected properly yet, actually. It's almost feels as if I hit the ground running since I came back. I think all of us have. You know, most of the girls went straight back into work. I've been setting myself up as an inspirational speaker, which has been a huge challenge. And I feel like I've been so far outside of my comfort zone since I've come back that I'm actually giving myself next month to reflect. So I'm going to go to Cape Town and actually spend the month reflecting there. So I don't feel like I've reflected fully, but I think over the course of the year that the things that really stand out to me are just being yourself, like being your authentic self, and knowing what your strengths are so instrumental in everything that happens in your life. And believing in yourself, you really have to have that self-belief. And once you have that, you can do anything that you set your mind to. I think that's definitely something that this journey has taught me, is that we all have the power to be who we want to be and to do anything that we want to do. the strength of a team for me is a lesson that has been highlighted even more through this rose. So my background, I've always worked with teams and changing team dynamics, and I love that. And I think that the road just highlighted the power of a team and the strength of the diversity of a team. And another huge lesson, I think, was that we can only control the controllable. You know, when we were out there on the ocean, we had control over everything that happened inside the boat, on the boat. But everything that happened outside of that boat was completely out of our control. You know, we couldn't control the currents and the winds and everything that was happening out of there. And I think we spend so much of our lives trying to control things that we'll never be able to control. And it's such a waste of time and energy. So since coming back, I am very much more aware of what's under my control and what's not under my control. And then just making that effort to only control the controllable and you know, just deal as best as you can with everything else. And I think the last lesson really is that, you know, we do have the power to choose our attitude, and we can look for the beauty and the positive. And for me, it's about celebrating really small successes along the way, you know, breaking everything down and just celebrating things as you go along and making sure that you enjoy the journey. Because, you know, we all need those wonderful destinations and those goals, because you need to have something to work towards, but you must never forget to enjoy that journey along the way. And I think that was something that I made such a huge effort to do out there on the ocean. Was, although Cairns was that, you know, that was the success, that was the end of the expedition, I loved the whole journey getting there. And for me, it was the journey along the way that was almost more powerful and gave me those learning experiences a lot more than the completion of the expedition. So I'd say just enjoy the journey, really. That's my main life mantra now, and it always really has been, is just enjoy the journey wherever it takes you.
What was it like coming back to reality and suddenly no longer being on the ocean, being this 29-foot rowing boat, not being surrounded by the women and your team? What was it like, you know, getting out of that 2 hour on, 2 hour off sleep pattern and row pattern and coming back to life? Because I imagine, you know, once you'd finished, suddenly there's press, there's TV, there's a whole wide world out there that you've got to suddenly start engaging in with again. How did that transition go for you?
Very bizarre, actually. You know, we'd only really spoken to each other and the wildlife. We did talk a lot to the wildlife out there, the sharks and the whales and the birds. So no, coming back to land was very strange for me. I didn't, after the week of press, we all went home to our respective families, and I didn't really want to talk to anyone. I didn't want to talk about the row. In fact, all I wanted to do was watch box sets. That's all I wanted to do. I spent hours watching Grey's Anatomy. It was my chosen box set for some reason, from about season 5 to about season 12. I literally just watched episode after episode, and it took a little bit of time to just adjust to being back on land. I mean, physically it took its toll on all of us. You know, just from walking, we all got shin splints, and we had to take things very slowly because we'd had no impact essentially for 9 months. So that was an adjustment. But you know, in every other respect, as I mentioned before, we're just so wonderfully adaptable. So the first night we were back on land in Cairns, we all slept a full 7-hour sleep. So we didn't wake up, you know, every 90 minutes. We just slept fully. And I think we just got back into the normal rhythm of life very, very quickly, and maybe too quickly. You know, maybe we should have taken a little bit longer to reflect. And I'm not sure that any of us really did that. We had a little bit of a break from each other as a team. that happened naturally because geographically we were in different areas of the UK, and Lausanne is based in South Africa. So that was a natural break that happened. But we Skyped every week just to maintain that contact, and set up a WhatsApp group. So we were in constant communication, but physically we didn't see each other for a short period of time. But the amazing thing I'd say is that, what happened out there is going to connect us forever. And we've actually, yesterday, we've all decided to do another very small challenge, but quite a large challenge for us because none of us are huge swimmers. We've decided we're going to do a 10K swim in June. So I think it's quite nice that we've got another little goal for us to work towards. And I think that was probably the hardest thing, is that, for so many years, when you look at Laura's involvement, we had this very, very specific goal. And then once we'd accomplished it, that goal had gone. So we came back to land, and I suppose we all felt a little bit lost. You've had this huge challenge and you've known exactly where you're going, and then suddenly you get there and you think, well, now what do I do? Now where do I go from here? Which I think in hindsight is why the journey and enjoying the journey is so important, because I think that normally happens when you get to your destination. It's normally a bit of an anti-climax, isn't it? It's like, okay, so I'm here, and now what? So it's interesting. Have you done the Camino?
No,
Santiago?
No, I haven't. Have you?
Yeah, and I think for me that was almost like a very small version of the row, where you know exactly where you're going, and every day you wake up and you know that all you have to do is walk and get to your destination, and you have the time and space to experience what happens along the way, and then you get to this destination and it's like, okay, and now what? And it's not the destination, and it's that incredible winding twisted journey that you take with its ups and its downs and its roller coaster rides, and that's really what life's about.
And what's next for you on the journey?
Well, apart from my 10K swim, sharing the story, I think, just the fact that I have this incredible first-hand experience of, I suppose, all those little messages that I've shared with you today. I just want to share that with as many people as possible. So I'm speaking, I'm doing inspirational talks to schools, to businesses, leadership conferences, and that has been an incredible journey in itself. I'm also coaching. So I joined forces with a company that we use. So we were coached through a process called the Best Year Yet, which helped us set those very specific goals, getting to the start line, and made us each be held accountable. And I found that process very, very powerful. So I'm now coaching with New Level Results to help others have their best year yet and cross their own Pacific. And we'll see. There might be a few things in the pipeline. I will keep you updated.
Now, you do have a website as well, Eye of the Nomad. Do you just want to share the website address, how best for people to get in contact with you or to follow you on social media? What are the best platforms? Yeah,
so I mean, as a team, our Coxless Crew website is still up and running. So that's coxlesscrew.com. And then individually, we're all doing very different things. So my website, it goes through Eye of the Nomad, but it's actually Natalia Cohen. So it's www.nataliacohen.co.uk. We also have a documentary coming out as well, hopefully in late spring of this year. And that documentary is called Losing Sight of Shore. So through the Coxless Crew website and my website, you can get through to Losing Sight of Shore as well. And yeah, we look forward really to sharing that story far and wide, even more through the documentary, and just prove to everybody that, we really can do anything we set our minds to, and, the power and the strength of the human spirit, I suppose. And although we may have crossed our literal Pacific, what we truly believe is that, we all have our own Pacifics to cross.
I mean, I could have carried on talking to you for hours because I know we've just only sort of pierced the surface of the challenges you faced and what you've learned, and the motivation side of things, the inspiration, just achieving what you've achieved. It's just, honestly, it's just spectacular to have gone out and achieved the goal of rowing across the Pacific Ocean. So a massive thank you for coming on the Tough Girl podcast. I will be sharing all of the links to your website, to your Twitter, to your Instagram, to your Facebook. Really excited about the documentary coming out. I think that will be amazing to watch. I think that's absolutely fantastic. So thank you so much for coming on the Tough Girl podcast and sharing your incredible story.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Hello, tribe. I just want to keep you a few more moments. I really hope you enjoyed that episode with Natalia. I think she's got this wonderful story to share, and she's an incredible communicator. I don't know about you, but I could have carried on listening to her for quite a long time. I also want to go back and actually interview Natalia again to find out more about her background, before she got to the ocean rowing and rowing across the Pacific Ocean. I think it will be an absolutely fascinating story. Now, if you are interested in rowers and you want to learn more about rowers and rowing across the Atlantic and the Pacific and these incredible oceans, then we have actually interviewed quite a few tough girls on the Tough Girl podcast. So take a listen to Ros Savage, Ellen Hath Davies and Lauren Morton. They have got some incredible rowing stories to share. And as always, it's not just about the rowing. It's about the mentality. It's about the fitness. It's about overcoming those challenges and those fears. And you can learn a lot from any of the women on the Tough Girl podcast. If you haven't subscribed already, please do hit that subscribe button and leave a 5-star review in iTunes. It does make a difference as it helps more people to find and listen to the podcast. If you want to find out more information about Natalia and get all of the links to her website and her social media, please do check out toughgirlchallenges.com, where all of the show notes are. There's more information on the blog. There's more information about myself and my next challenge, which is through hiking the Appalachian Trail, 2,190 odd miles, which I will be leaving to do on the 3rd of June until the 10th of September. So you can find more about that on the website. So please do go and check it out. Now, if you are looking to be kept updated on what's been happening, then you can also subscribe to the Tough Girl Challenges newsletter. I do not bombard you with emails. It's just every once in a while I send you a quick email update and just keep you updated on what we're doing. Now, hopefully as well, you will have heard about the 7 women, 7 challenges that we're currently doing at the moment. And what this is we took 7 women at the beginning of the year, 7 women from the Tough Girl tribe who have all got a big challenge that they want to go after in 2017. And we are following these women on that journey. Our first episode came out on the 1st of January, and it describes who the women are, what their backgrounds are, and what their challenge or challenges are going to be in 2017. 2 parts have come out now, and it is fascinating because we don't know what's going to happen on this story, on this journey. We're talking about the challenges that they're facing as they face them. We're learning about what it takes to take your family on a round the world adventure, what it takes to fundraise, to raise money, to row across or around Great Britain and across the Atlantic. We learn what it's like to train for an ultra marathon. We learn what it's like to do 12 challenges in 12 months. And this is ordinary women. This is real women from all backgrounds and all ages, and it is absolutely a fascinating story. So please do go check it out. All the links again are available on toughgirlchallenges.com. Now, if you're thinking, I want to give back, I want to support, I want to do something to help inspire other women and other girls, but I don't know what I can do, then I have the answer for you. You can become a patron of the Tough Girl podcast. You can support the podcast financially every single month, and all it takes is a minimum of $2 a month or $5 a month, which is £1.67 a month, less than 50p a podcast episode. If you can do that, then you can help me continue to spread these stories stories. I can't do it without you. At the moment, I've got 75 amazing patrons who are sponsoring me through Patreon, patreon.com. Just search for patreon.com and look for the Tough Girl podcast. Again, all of the links are on the website. And donate, become a regular supporter of the Tough Girl podcast. It will make such a big difference. And you would know every single Tuesday when you sit or you stand or you run or you're waiting for your train or you're in your van or you're driving around for work, you would know the reason the podcast is coming out every single week is because of you. You had something to do with that. And when you invest your money into the Tough Girl podcast, you know it is going to have amazing results. If you've listened to the podcast and you've gone on to do something, you've signed up for a 5K, a 10K, you've started a new fitness plan, you've decided to lose weight, you've decided to leave that toxic relationship, you've decided to change your life and you've made a difference because you've listened to the Tough Girl podcast, please consider giving back. There is also the opportunity, if you're a female, to come and join the closed Facebook group. The Tough Girl Tribe is an incredibly supportive group of women who are there to help one another, to support one another as we all go after our dreams, our big goals. And like Natalia said, you can't do it by yourself. You need a team, you need a tribe. And we have that community with the Tough Girl Tribe. The women in the tribe are just phenomenal, sharing their knowledge, giving support, asking for help. If you want to get involved, please do come and join the Tough Girl Tribe. It is free for everyone to join. I do ask for a suggested donation of $5 a month through Patreon to join the tribe. Have an incredible week wherever you are, whatever you are doing, and just know that next Tuesday there will be another fantastic episode of the Tough Girl podcast. They come out every Tuesday at 7 a.m. UK time without fail. Take care, lots of love, and I'll speak to you soon.